Hello and welcome to the latest video on my top 1000 countdown. Now today we're counting down numbers 400 to 391. Okay, so 10 more fighters that are going in. We're officially in the top 400. So the first of those fighters now, number 400, is Johnny Wilson. Okay, the former middleweight champion. Now Johnny Wilson beat one world champion. He fought 102 rounds against champions, and he beat two Hall of Fame fighters, also fighting 126 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Johnny Wilson had a total of 9 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 29 knockouts. Okay, 16 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 4 knockouts in the first round. Johnny Wilson was top 10 rated for 1 year, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 15 fights. Now Johnny Wilson was pound for pound rated for 0 years. He had 10 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. Good morning, Martin. Good to see you, buddy. Hope you're well. Johnny Wilson's opposition fought rate was 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Wilson had 9 fights against champions. That included 2 wins, 7 loss, no draw, with 0 knockouts. He had 11 fights against Hall of Famers. Oh, good afternoon, Paul from Greece, the home of Anton Christoforidis. Johnny Wilson had 11 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 8 loss, no draw, with no KOs, and he had 7 world title fights, including 4 wins, 2 loss, 1 draw, and Johnny Wilson made 4 title defences. So on to our next fighter, fighter 399, is Billy Papke, another former middleweight champion. But I guarantee they're not all middleweight champions on this one, but we start off with 2. So Papke beat 2 world champions individually. He fought 104 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 individual Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 98 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Papke had 0 fights against rated fighters, being a pre-rating era fighter. He scored 31 knockouts, 17 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 6 in the first round. Now Papke was top 10 rated for 0 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 27 fights. Now Papke was pound for pound rated for 2 years, and he had 11 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 4 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And his opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Papke had 8 fights against champions, including 2 wins, 6 loss, no draw, with 2 knockouts. He had 8 fights against Hall of Famers with exactly the same record, 2 wins, 6 loss, no draw, with 2 knockouts. And Papke had 4 world title fights. He won 1 of them, lost 3, making 0 title defences. So on to our next fighter, fighter number 398. It's a fighter not often spoke of by most people, a fighter called Nel Tarleton. Now Nel Tarleton beat 1 world champion. He fought 72 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 60 rounds against Hall of Famers throughout his career. Now against rated opponents, Nel Tarleton comes in with a total of 30 fights overall. He scored 42 knockouts, 5 in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. Tarleton was top 10 rated himself for 8 years, and the longest unbeaten run he had in his career was a run of 37 fights. Now he was never pound for pound rated. He did have 3 fights against pound for pounders, but scored no wins in the 3 pound for pound categories. But Nel Tarleton's opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 4 from 13. So in terms of fights against champions, okay, Nel Tarleton had 1 win with 2 losses, 2 draws, and 0 KOs. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, including no wins, 2 loss, 2 draw, with 0 KOs. And Nel Tarleton had 0 world title fights. Yeah, Paul, actually, the first 8 or 9s will be coming up. I did a 9 the other day, and an 8, and a number of 7s. The first 10 has not happened yet, but that will come as well. So, on to our next fighter. Okay, this fighter is Johnny Tapia. Now Johnny Tapia, okay, beat 11 world champions. He fought 137 rounds against champions, and Tapia beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 12 rounds against Hall of Famers overall, and he had a total of 16 fights against rated opposition. Now in terms of knockouts, Johnny Tapia scored 30 knockouts. Okay, he scored 17 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and he scored 8 knockouts in the first round. Top 10 rated. He was rated for 11 years. in total, so nearly over a decade, nearly a dozen years himself. And his longest unbeaten run was a run of 48 fights. Now, Tapia was pound for pound rated for 2 years, and he had 2 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win, scored 0 wins against top 3 or pound for pound number 1 fighters, and his opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Tapia had 14 fights against champions, including 11 wins, 3 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts. He had 1 fight against Hall of Famers that was a defeat, and he had a massive title fight record. A lot of people may not realise how many title fights Tapia had, but he had 19, winning 17 of them with 1 loss, 1 draw, and making 14 title defences. So from Tapia, okay, in 397, we go back to 396, and that fighter is Sugar Ramos. Now, Sugar Ramos, okay, beat 3 world champions. He fought 58 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 31 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And Sugar Ramos had 27 fights against rated opponents. Now, in terms of knockouts, he scored 40 overall for his career, 16 in 3 rounds or less, and 2 in the first round. Ramos was top 10 rated for a total of 10 years throughout his career, and a longest unbeaten run that ran to 34 fights. Now, Ramos was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for 2 years, and he had 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win in all 3 pound for pound categories, and his opposition fought rate was 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Ramos had 7 fights against champions, including 3 wins, 4 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 3 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. And he had 7 world title fights. That included 4 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and 3 title defences. So there's Sugar Ramos in 396. Fighter number 395, okay, is a fighter with a very tough career, okay, not accomplished at title level, but still a very tough career, Maxi Berger. Now, Maxi Berger, okay, beat 1 world champion. He fought 34 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 individual Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 70 rounds against them. Now, Maxi Berger fought 34 fights, against rated opponents, throughout his career, 34, good total, and he scored 25 knockouts, 17 in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round. Now, Berger was top 10 rated for 3 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was a run of 23 fights. Now, he was never pound for pound rated himself. He did have 10 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 0 wins against top 3 pound for pounders, and 0 wins against number 1 pound for pounders. And Maxi Berger, okay, his opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So, Maxi Berger had 5 fights against champions, including 1 win, 4 loss, no draw, with no KOs. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 6 losses, no draws, with no KOs. And Maxi Berger had 0 world title fights. So on to our next fighter, fighter 394, a fighter I enjoyed watching back in the day, Jorge Paez. Extroverted and flamboyant he was, but a very good fighter as well. Jorge Paez beat 8 world champions, okay, fought 157 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 14 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And Jorge Paez had 25 fights against rated opponents. He scored 52 knockouts, 27 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 8 in the first round. Paez was top 10 rated as a fighter for 4 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 30 fights in total. Now, Paez was pound for pound rated for 0 years, and he had 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Jorge Paez's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. So Paez had 18 fights against champions, including 9 wins, 7 loss, 2 draw, with 4 knockouts. He had 2 fights against Hall of Famers, both of them are defeats, and he had 13 world title fights, including 7 wins, 4 loss, 2 draw, with 8 title defences. So onwards and upwards. Oh God, yeah, there was a 7. Who was it now? Oh God, a black fighter. can't recall offhand. It's caught me out a bit as that one. So fighter number 393, okay, is Willie Brennan. Now, Willie Brennan is a new entry this year. A lot of people may not be as familiar with Willie Brennan's career. Him and Greg put on one of the best fights between them. To a rapturous crowd. It was against Willie Brennan that Harry Greb in an interview said, "Do you know what, I'm going to go in and punch non-stop until either he drops or I drop." And, you know, the whole auditorium was mental at end of fight. The fight went the distance. Greb was just punching non-stop. And that helped birth the non-stop punching style. Because Greb's style, as I've said many times on my old channel, his style morphed over his career. From his early career to his mid-career to his later career with the loss of depth perception, with the blindness in one eye, etc. His style changed over time. No, Martin, that's totally caught me out. I'm so in zone on my video, it's totally caught me out. My mind's void. But I will find out. Willie Brennan, okay, beat 2 world champions. He fought 100 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 90 rounds against Hall of Famers. If Willie Brennan had ratings around, he would have fought a lot of fights against rated fighters, but he's a pre-rating era fighter, so he only ended up with 4 fights against fighters who were rated. He scored 34 knockouts, 11 in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round. Now, Brennan was top 10 rated for 0 years, obviously, and his longest unbeaten run was a run of 18 fights. Now, he was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings, but he did have 12 fights against pound for pounders, scoring the 1 win. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. But just to please both of you guys in the chat, his opposition fought rate was 7 from 18. So there we go. There's one. I can't remember the. I'd really drive me mad now. Other guy. Opposition fought rate 3 from 13. Now he had 10 fights against champions. Cheers, Paul. Yeah, I appreciate that, buddy. So Brennan had 10 fights against champions, including 2 wins, 5 loss, 3 draw with 0 knockouts. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including no wins, 8 loss, 1 draw with 0 knockouts. And he had no world title fights, but obviously fought a lot of other tough contenders as well. So there's Willie Brennan, new entry this year. On to our next fighter. It is Gennady Golovkin. Some people say he should be top 10. I'll just find that entire conversation ridiculous. I'm not going into it. Okay, but Gennady Golovkin beat 6 world champions. He fought 83 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting no rounds against Hall of Famers yet. Undoubtedly Canelo will join, and his stats will change there. Golovkin had 17 fights against rated fighters in his career, and he scored 37 knockouts, 20 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 5 knockouts in the first round. And someone once came to me and said he'd never had 17. Well, if you think he fought Jacobs, he fought a trilogy with Canelo, he fought Derevyanchenko. When you actually go through his career, you know, Daniel Gill, David Lemieux, all these other guys, Gregor Proxer, he's actually fought a lot of rated fighters. He scored 37 knockouts, 20 in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round, and he was top 10 rated for a total of 12 years. Now, Golovkin's longest unbeaten run, okay, was a run of 37 fights, and he was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for 5 years. Now, Golovkin had 4 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win. He never scored a win over a pound for pound top 3 fighter, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And his opposition fought rate comes in at 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. And it's just interesting because next time I do a top 1000, Lomachenko will be included, so people will see where he places. I haven't added Tyson Fury yet because there's too much talk he's coming back all the time, and I don't fully trust it. So until I'm absolutely sure he's retired, Tyson Fury won't get added in. So anyway, Golovkin had 9 fights against champions, 6 wins, 2 loss, 1 draw with 5 KOs. He had no fights against Hall of Famers yet, but that will change. And he had 25 world title fights, including 22 wins, 2 loss, 1 draw with 22 title defences. So there's Golovkin there in 392. The final fighter, 391, okay, is tough Gil Turner. Gil Turner had a really tough career. Gil Turner was an excellent fighter with many, many good wins to his credit. Gil Turner is, I find, very underrated by many people. He beat 5 world champions, okay, he fought 129 rounds against champions. And Gil Turner beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 89 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Gil Turner had 38 fights against rated fighters, 38. He scored 35 knockouts, 12 in 3 rounds or less, and 7 in the first round. Gil Turner was top 10 rated for a total of 5 years, and the longest unbeaten run he had was a run of 31 fights. Gil Turner was pound for pound rated for 0 years, and he had 16 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 6 wins. Gil Turner scored 4 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 2 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Gil Turner's opposition fought rate was 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Turner had 13 fights against champions, including 6 wins, 7 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 5 loss, no draw, with 2 knockouts, and he had 1 title fight that was a loss. Yeah, I agree, Paul. I said at the time on my old channel, Floyd should fight Golovkin. He's titled at light middleweight 2 occasions. He's titled at welterweight twice. He's acclimatized to those weights. So just going up from like 150, early 150s to fighting, he'd probably come in at 155, 156, Golovkin 160. I didn't see a problem with it. But obviously Floyd fans at the time had a huge problem with it because they were worried Golovkin might beat him up, because when he fought another welterweight in Kell Brook did well in the first few rounds, but after that Golovkin was just destroying him. He was just hunting him down. He had no respect for his power, and he was just walking through whatever Kell Brook were throwing and just battering him. And I'm not sure Floyd wouldn't have got the same fate. But then again, Floyd is a much more skilled fighter than Kell Brook. So yeah, I think it would have been a fight. Look at Terence Crawford recently. You know, he jumped up in weight to fight Canelo Alvarez, who with no rehydration weight, from what I understand. So you know, that's I'll be right, Posse. That's being a G there. So anyway, Gil Turner had 13 fights against champions, 6 wins, 7 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 5 loss, no draw, with 2 knockouts, and he had 1 title fight that was a defeat. So there is my latest video, 400 to 391. Okay, another new entry. As I've said throughout, there have been a number of new entries this year. There'll be new entries next year and the year after. When I do my next top 1000, the big top 1000 with 2 slides per fighter, there'll be even more new entries in top 1000, and also the scoring system will have been redesigned, amended. So it'll be interesting how things change up. But for now, I'll say big goodbye to guys in chat, Martin and Paul. Paul, enjoy yourself, have a good time. You and your missus, enjoy every minute, mate. It's all about memories with family, all about memories. Martin, take care of yourself, buddy, as always. And I'll catch you on the next one. I may do another this afternoon at some point, but I'll see. But if not, over weekend into next week, I'll be doing them 2 a day. So I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.